Alexei Ivanovich, the Grand Prince of Moscow, was laying the foundations of Russia's greatness. Pope Leo X was turning Rome into an intellectual garden. Henry VIII ruled England, Charles V Spain, Francois I France, and further south, Gritti, the Doge of Venice, the one city above all others that was the gateway to the Levant. Barely 30 years had passed since Columbus stepped onto the shores of a new world. Europe was coming of age, having built up its first naval squadrons, its first permanent armies, and having discovered the principles and use of artillery. Yet Suleiman was superior to all the European powers in battle, while at home he was, with his architect Sinan, building mosques, schools, and hospitals, which rivaled the works of the master builders of Europe. Michelangelo was at this time struggling to raise the dome of St. Peter's, and Francois I had started to rebuild the Louvre. Despite the 13 wars in which he personally led his soldiers into battle, Suleiman had time to produce an improved code of justice, and incidentally to execute corrupt officials, including one son-in-law, for acts of injustice. He husbanded his vast treasures. His standing army of 50,000 was well paid. He had a literary bent, was a disciple of Aristotle, and his hero was Alexander the Great. He kept a daily diary when at war. He wrote poetry when at peace. The Venetian envoy to Constantinople at the time described him as a man of commanding personality, tall, thin, with a prominent brow, startling black eyes, and an aquiline nose above long moustaches, and a forked beard, which partly softened the thin mouth with its trace of hereditary cruelty. His complexion, he said, was as if smoked. He was relentless and proud, and a stickler for protocol, particularly for the Friday prayers when the streets were lined with people. Friday was, of course, the Muslim Sabbath, when Suleiman usually prepared to go to prayer in St. Sophia. The master of the wardrobe had laid out all his clothes, scenting them with aloes. Suleiman wore a gown of heavy silk, and over it a sleeveless robe trimmed with ermine. On his head he wore a wide oval turban, with an aigrette of peacock feathers held in place by a clasp of diamonds. His white horse was ready, its heavy leather saddle studded with precious gems. Outside, in the first court of the Grand Seraglio, ringed by a wall 3 miles long, a cast of characters drawn from the Arabian Nights awaited the moment when their lord and master would emerge and ride along its paved paths, past the higgledy-piggledy workaday buildings needed to sustain a town of 5,000 people. A bakery on the right, a giant wood store on the left, big enough to hold 500 shiploads, and guarded by the tressed halberdiers, whose headgear incorporated wigs on either side of their faces, in case they tried to steal a glance at the Sultan's odalisks when carrying wood for the harem fires. There seemed to be no rhyme or reason for the throng of people, wrote the Venetian envoy after watching Suleiman set off for prayers. He was mistaken, or misleading, for if the harem were the heart of the Seraglio was the heart of the empire. It was not merely Suleiman's residence, but the seat of government, a curious mixture of private and public, as though Buckingham Palace and Whitehall lay within the same walled garden. Envoys from vassal states waited to bow before him and present gifts to God's vice-regent on earth. On this particular day, some desert horses, 2 elephants, a cargo of priceless furs, an egg-sized emerald, and a group of fair-skinned Circassian virgins. Filing through their ranks were the Janissaries, the privileged troops drawn from captured Christian boys, welded into the empire from an early age, swaggering in their white turbans, loose jackets, and yellow boots. Ambassadors in scarlet and gold, with their retinue and escort, waited to pay their respects near the gate to the divan and the second court, leading to a medieval-looking gate with its towers and conical tops, like candle snuffers, which concealed a dungeon from where the severed heads of men of rank were carried out and placed on iron spikes by the gate, to blacken in the sun. Those of rank below Pasha were exposed in niches by the main gate. The Grand Vizier, or